President Bola Tinubu has recalled all Nigerian ambassadors, both career and non-career envoys, says Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Yusuf Tuga. A confirmation followed in a statement by Ajuri Ngelale, the special advisor to the president on media and publicity. The statement, titled President Tinubu Directs the Total Recall of all career and non-career ambassadors, was dated September 2, 2023. Also affected are heads of consulate in all the nation's embassies and high commissions. The only exemptions are the country's permanent representatives at the United Nations in New York and Geneva. The envoys have till October 31 to clear their desks and return home. It will be recalled that the Senate had in July and June, before then, confirmed 83 ambassadors, including 42 careers and 41 non-careers. According to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the recall was part of a recalibration of the nation's foreign affairs structure. The 4 Ds are democracy and development, demography, and diaspora. Joining us now on the Morning Show from Kaduna, as we take a look at the recall of all Nigerian ambassadors, is Ambassador Ibrahim May Sule, Nigerian former ambassador to Indonesia. Ambassador Sule, thank you very much for joining us on the Morning Show. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Robin. You are welcome.
Well, Ambassador Sule, is there a crisis in Nigeria's foreign policy sphere that the president of Nigeria will recall in one fell swoop all heads of consulate, ambassadors, both career and non-career, and ask all of them to report back home by October 31? Is there a crisis situation?
Mr. Robin, thank you very much for this early morning call. But I just want to make it very clear that ambassadors are there representing the countries that they happen to have come from, but then fitting in for the president. So it is at the discretion of the president to recall the ambassadors at any time of his own wish, and then appoint those that he believes will represent him more effectively. So the choice is his own, and that has always been the tradition.
No, my question was not about the prerogative of the president. My question was about the recall of almost everybody from all the embassies across the world. So I've had the view expressed by some persons, but specifically by Ambassador Olusegun Akinsanya, that, look, it's better to stagger it. When you recall everybody, you give the impression that there is a crisis. Do you think that the approach of recalling everybody is in order? It's not about the president's powers of hiring and firing whoever he wants as his sovereign ambassadors.
There you see, the tradition has always been those that are what they call in coma, the career diplomats, normally stay there for 3 years, and they've been normally shifted after 3 years. So ideally, in most cases, it is the political appointees that are normally called over as soon as a new government comes into power. But I think it depends upon their own thinking of the way things have been done in the last few years. Just like the crisis that you have in your own economy, there is no way that one crisis will happen that it will not affect another place. But whether there is a crisis or not, the fact is very clear that he has the powers to do the same, and he can recall them, because the situation is depending upon the kind of person that has been done before. If one as a government has its own policy direction and think about what to do or what to achieve, in the kind of situation we are in, the economy is in tatters. We're in a very difficult situation as a country. We started quite positively before. Most members of the BRICS were our own colleagues. Well, as it is now, you know where we are, we don't even need to talk about it. So I hope there must have been an idea, policy thinking of why they intend to do that. But I agree, it would have been much easier to start with the political appointees and then allow the professionals that have been there. Somebody has just been there for less than a year or 6 months, because it doesn't go together with the posting of the political appointees in most cases, to the best of my knowledge. But this is the first time that within the few years that I know that the ambassadors are all recalled at the same time. But the crisis is there in the country, we all know. We can't pretend that there is no crisis in the country. But at the same time, one doesn't even know what is really behind them and deciding the way they decided, of which they have the right to do it.
All right, so beyond the right to do so, as you've mentioned, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has also said that this is part of the recalibration of the structures of the ministry, and they've actually introduced their 4D going forward. They've cited democracy and development, they've cited demography and diaspora. What's your take on this new direction of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs? And it would be great to hear your thoughts as to some of the key areas that the new Minister of Foreign Affairs should look into.
Those who are in dire need of investment in this country, and depending upon the kind of people that you are likely going to, you have to select certain areas that you expect to get some. You have just seen that the president have just traveled to attend the G20 meeting, as I believe, as an observer, because we are not members of the G20. But the whole idea is to get these people. I only hope there has to be something positive, because the important thing is wherever you go, people know exactly what is happening in your country. In my own thinking, the best thing one should do is to try to make sure that things are being put in a proper perspective at home before you even start thinking about what to do outside.
Right. So let's even go back and dial back and assess things. Yes, they've pulled the ambassadors out. Do you think there's probably going to be a shake-up? Probably some new loyalists have probably been lined up for ambassadorial positions in the future? And how quick do you think there's going to be a return to status quo with the ambassadors?
You see, my brother, the real problem that we have been having in this country, people are running away from it from day one. You have a system that allowed for people to be inaugurated in government while there is a dispute hanging on their neck, both at the state and the federal level. Along the line, you have given somebody additional privilege that he cannot be in the same wavelength with the people that he's going along with. So basically, we started in a wrong way. I believe you have to blame all the political parties. The structures have not been fair for the country as such, because whatever happened, somebody who has been in power will have an edge over somebody who is not being in power for obvious reasons. So the country is not being policed properly. Be it as it may, they may have their own idea. They may be thinking about how best to strengthen their own acceptability outside. But one would have thought government should be inaugurated after all legal disputes have been put in place, just like what is happening in the US. But for whatever it is, you have 3 months that people have been making staying idle, who would have been able to do even the first round of the litigation by the end of May before inauguration. But be it as it may, they must have got their own reason for doing it, and I believe there is the need to at least restructure the operation in the foreign affairs. I think just like what I was telling you, if you look at back, this nation started very positively. And all those that have started with, I served in Indonesia. Indonesia was like a pariah nation in the 70s. But automatically, as of their own right, they are now members of the G20, purely because of positive, and then the quality of the leadership they had. So there is nothing wrong in gendering the entire structure if they have got some ideas of how they want to do it.
Well, Ambassador, Ayo Mairo drew your attention to the efforts to recalibrate, that's the word they are using, Nigeria's foreign policy process along certain thematic lines. But the big elephant in the room has been this concern about the fact that Nigeria has not been funding its foreign missions very well. You have many of our embassies, our missions that are poorly funded and, hampering efficiency. And some people have said, well, if you can't fund these missions, why not rationalize them? Why not reduce the number of countries in which we have representation? So I thought you were going to respond to this recalibration about democracy and development, demography and diaspora, which are just meaningless terms as far as I'm concerned. What do you think that we need to do to make our foreign missions more effective, more efficient, as someone who ran one of those foreign missions at a point?
No, I think the issue of funding is very important, and it affects the image of both the country and then the representative of the country who resides in wherever he is. If you find out in some cases people hardly pay their tax and they will end up cutting off their electricity supply and all that, that is very terrible. But as you rightly said, let me talk about Asia that I really served. I remember at one time, Malaysia and Singapore used to be served under the Republic of Indonesia because it's a larger country, and then they started their own much earlier than most of them. The first people around the south used to come to Nigeria in 1965. So you could see there is a need at this political period that we're in to try to see that we should understand what we are likely going to get from the country we are representing. You can put some of them together, reduce the number of the people around those places, unless, of course, from the way it started, looking at having about 48-something cabinet ministers, I'm not sure if they're thinking about doing the right thing at that, in the way we are heading to. But everybody has been talking about reducing the cost of governance because we're in dire need of the funds. We're in a problem between servicing our debts and doing the right thing to serve our own people. So there is the need. Maybe if that is their own thinking, I think one would definitely get along with it. It's very positive, especially now with the kind of systems that operate internet services and whatever. You can put some of them in the same place and then reduce the cost. That may be their own thinking, and that could look very positive. And then you look at what you expect to get from those countries, and you try to assess the situation and the kind of people that you're going to send there. That would also going to be a very positive thing to do.
All right, Ambassador. Now, the new Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Ambassador Tuggar, is with the President on his trip to India for the G20 summit. Now, Nigeria is not yet a member of the G20, but in the statement released by the spokesperson to the President, Mr. Ngelale, he had said that this is part of the moves of the President to possibly have Nigeria be a member of the bloc. Now, the G20 is made up of, as you would know, the 20 biggest and most advanced economies in the world, with South Africa being the only African country there. Why is Nigeria not a member of such a bloc? And what are the advantages, in terms of being there? But very importantly also, what are some of the things that we should be looking at in terms of gaining from this trip to the G20 summit?
No, you see, when we started, I've made it very clear too that I believe our own going there is just to be observers because we're not members of G20. We started being actively members of what they call D8, 8 developing countries. You have Turkey, you have Indonesia, you have Malaysia, you have the 8 countries. You have Iran, you have Pakistan. They call it D8, and they used to have a representation from Nigeria. That is just a step towards being members of the G20. But looking at our own economy and the way we are going, I think it is going to be difficult. Even BRICS, who have just started developing themselves, quite a number of BRICS were our own contemporaries. So as I said earlier, the important thing is not the trip. The important thing is to look in and see the best we can do to develop our own economy. You'll be attracted. Obviously, people will say, come in. The idea of using funds and going there is not actually the best idea for now. But I believe in Nigeria, with our resources, with our population, would automatically have qualified us to be there if we have managed our economy well. But the last 8 years has been very disastrous for this country. I'm sorry to say it.
Let's look at the image of this country. You served as an ambassador of this country to Indonesia. What do you think we can do to redeem the battered image of this country? Because as we speak now, the image of Nigeria internationally is at an all-time low.
Now, I've said it earlier, but we have to look inwards. With these systems in the country, everybody knows what is happening everywhere else. We have to see it low. We know exactly the kind of way corruption has done a lot of damage to our own economy, to our own lives. I keep on talking to my friends even yesterday. Even health services. You're lucky you are in Lagos. You have very good standard hospitals. The economy is moving well. But come down here and I don't think you can talk about a very standard hospital that will provide the basic needs of health in this kind of country. So it's the same thing with the economy. The economy in shatters have been properly mismanaged. You must be hearing the disclosures in central bank and what has always been happening. You have to look inward and restructure our own going and look at, do some background searches before you put people in certain places. This is very important. Politically, you need to rely more on the political parties. The political parties themselves are all in tatters, both of them. You look at the way people have been selected, not being elected to lead political parties. So there's a lot of work to be done internally in this country before we move forward. And I pray God will guide us through, because we need to leave a positive legacy. This is actually the country that we have passed through while we are growing. So we need to think seriously.
Ambassador, what's your honest assessment of Nigeria's foreign policy in terms of stature, in terms of influence, in terms of impact today? Once upon a time in this same country, Nigeria used to be in the forefront of foreign policy issues in Africa, in the Commonwealth, from Tafawa Balewa to Gowon to Obasanjo, to Murtala Mohammed, even, the intervention of Nigeria in the frontline states. But all of a sudden now, Nigeria has become the country that Niger can just ridicule. Nigeria has become a country that will go as a spectator to BRICS, as a country that goes as a spectator, and some people will be jubilating to the G20. Where did we miss it? Where did we get it wrong? Because it looked like foreign policy arena used to be one of those areas where Nigeria was doing very well. What went wrong?
You see, there has been too much confusion. There have been very successful career diplomats and non-career diplomats. You can talk about Odoji, talk about Ngeleruma, and what have you. We had a lot of image. I recalled during our school days, particularly during Murtala, the kind of image and the respect this country had. It all comes back to the quality of the leadership that we have been having.
We seem to have lost connection there with Ambassador Sule, so we'll take a quick break and then we'll try to re-establish connection with him, and we'll be right back. Please stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the morning show here on the Arise News channel. Our guest is still Ambassador Ibrahim Sule, Nigeria's former ambassador to Indonesia, who has been taking a look at the recall of Nigerian envoys from all the missions overseas. Ambassador Sule, thank you for staying with us. Yes, you were talking about Nigeria's foreign policy process and why we seem to have lost it. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think as I was saying, whole thing boils down on the quality of the leadership. Take, for instance, when we started the issue with Niger. I remember we had a chat with you about it. You just go into the air, you close border, you close your airspace. At the end of the day, it is your own people are now being hurt. You can't cross through Niger to go to wherever you are. You have to divert your flight. The cost of the tickets have gone up. Niger doesn't have to come back here to go to anywhere else. They will just go straight. It is you that will have to pass through the airspace. So all these things are based on the consultation and the kind of people around somebody. The reality is that we have lost that quality for quite some time, and it is that we are now paying with the kind of confusion that we're in the system. We pray that God will see us through, but it's a very difficult time. As I was telling you earlier, one feels very disappointed that this is actually not the kind of country that one has passed through. We are all in it. We need to do a lot of apologies to our children. But what we need to do is to look seriously for whatever anybody will do as an ambassador. It depends upon the policy directive that comes through your ministry and comes through the leadership of that country. So it is not only our own foreign policy that has been distorted or has gone down. I'm sorry to say it, I can't see anything that has gone up in the last few years in this country.
All right, so, I mean, we hear you very clearly in terms of your assessment of the last administration. You said it was one of the worst times for Nigerians. But looking forward, because we now have an opportunity to right some of the wrongs that you've identified, and the body language of the president does indicate that he's quite interested in positioning Nigeria quite well on the world stage. And that's why I asked you the question earlier as to some of the key areas that the new Minister of Foreign Affairs should focus on. We've talked about foreign missions and being underfunded. I'd mentioned the 4 thematic areas that they want to concentrate on. And so I want you to speak to some of those things. I don't know if you believe in any of those 4 Ds, or you want to introduce some of your recommendations, because this is quite key. We've talked about the fact that Nigeria should be a global player, being the biggest economy in Africa, the most populous nation in Africa, but we don't seem to be taking that position currently. Please tell us, what are some of those areas? I'd really like to get your thoughts, from your experience.
I think I've said it earlier. We can start, but you see, you start from a weak base, because the entire country is undergoing some kind of litigation here and there. So you are starting from a very weak base, but whatever it is, the important thing is to look more positive. The country belongs to all of us, and the more prosperous, the better for all of us. And I believe the National Assembly should be very careful, so that next time they should try to look at the issue of getting people inaugurated when you have disposed at least the first round of litigation. That will give people some more confidence. But be it as it may, I believe knowing the guy that is in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but whatever a minister will do, it has to be checked by who appoints him, because you are working on behalf of somebody. I can see people making some comparisons. Running Lagos is not the same thing as running Nigeria. But once one is determined and with faith, he can move somewhere. But we need to look at the funding of the mission, which is very important.
Okay.
Because once the image of the mission is being battered down, then you can hardly do anything. 2, you have to look at the quality of the people you are seeing, look at their background, and know exactly the kind of contribution that they're in a position to make. That is important. And I believe this should be part of restructuring itself, so that you know with the financial position, if there's the need of slowing down or bringing down some of the mission and putting them under the supervision of another mission. As I gave you earlier, that when it started, both Singapore and Malaysia used to be under the Republic of Indonesia.
Okay.
So there's nothing wrong in trying to look at the structures.
Okay, Ambassador, quickly, you said there's a difference between running Lagos and running Nigeria. Can you expatiate more on that? And can you also precisely give us what should be the ingredients? Should it be, okay, we should have courts like it is done in Kenya, that after 1 or 2 weeks, you can take your electoral case to court and the court decides before any president is sworn in? Should that be the model? But what's the difference between running Lagos and running, like you said before? Can you expatiate more on that?
No, you see, what I'm saying is that it is more a homogeneous society. Take, for instance, even the leader here may have a very good intention I gave you a typical example of what happened with Niger, the kind of situation we found ourselves in. The trailers and the vehicles that have been broken down because of the vehicles along the line, the queues and what have you, and then the cost of the air tickets because the space has been closed. All these things could have been avoided. It was later that we started this idea of dialogue and talking to them. We send ulamas, we send some of our leaders over there. He would have done that one before taking those decisions. Maybe would have been someone. Now we are talking about either giving them 9 months, or some people are saying now we have to go to war. If you're following the French preference are very bitter. They are losing their control over their colonies. So obviously they can do anything else, but we shouldn't be used by them. We should understand that we live much more peaceful with our neighbors, and we should find a way of handling it peacefully. I think what I was saying is that you should try to make sure that you have disposed of at least the first round of any litigation, either a governor or member of the National Assembly or anything else before they've been inaugurated. That will give somebody a better confidence on whatever one is doing. But once you have got litigation hanging on your neck, I don't think, because people are looking at you even outside with the kind of question mark that you are still not yet there. So these are the kind of things that we should be trying to avoid. As I was saying, that it depends upon the way the judiciary is being used. You have got a complete 3 months. You should be able at least to dispose of the first round of the litigation within 3 months. Or else, like what we had recommended, I remember during the 2014 conference, you create a constitutional court that should be directly responsible for those kind of issues. Because it's not fair period to these people. You can go to court for about 1 year, and I don't think that is fair.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your insights this morning, Ambassador Ibrahim Mason.